back with more on the struggling U.S. economy and those staggering new jobless numbers just out. 10% of the American workforce now, nearly 17 million people out of work. And that is, of course, fueling the debate over when the economy should reopen. Walmart is the world's largest private sector employer. It's been one of the companies working with the president's coronavirus task force. Doug McMillon is Walmart's president and CEO. He's also chairman of the board of directors for the Business Roundtable, which is an association of America's leading CEOs. Mr. McMillon, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah.
I know you know those unemployment numbers well. I also know that Walmart is hiring right now. But we were so struck by this image of cars lining up at a food bank in Texas. Some people are expecting that the unemployment figure ultimately could be higher than that of the Great Depression. Are you concerned that we may actually see not just a recession, but a depression in this country?
Well, I think it's really important that we prioritize the health and safety of the American public right now. And it is also important that we get back to work as we can. I think that's going to take a lot of collaboration between private enterprise, small business, large business, as well as state and local, and obviously the national government. That'll need to happen a region at a time, a county at a time. And there are a number of us thinking about now what needs to be in place so that other types of businesses beyond ours can start back to work. At Walmart, we never really shut down. Keeping the grocery supply chain flowing has been our purpose these last few weeks and months in this country and around the world. So we have learned a bit how to operate and adjust to try and serve customers in this environment. And we'll be contributing those ideas as best we can.
It's interesting what you just said. The president this week said he really would like to see the economy open back up with a big bang, and who wouldn't? But you were just talking about how the economy might reopen and what might be necessary for companies other than yours to reopen. Are you imagining mass testing, that kind of thing?
I think there are a number of ingredients that have got to be in place. We do need good data. We need improved testing. Lots of folks are working on that now. Also, the important role of PPE comes into play here. In Walmart, we've made a number of operating adjustments. As you probably know, we reduced our hours. We're cleaning the stores overnight. We've got masks and gloves for our associates so that they can use those. We put up plexiglass at our cashier stands and in pharmacy. We're taking the temperature of our associates starting today before they start in our stores, clubs, and distribution centers. I think there are ingredients like that that need to come into play as customers think about social distancing and associates respond to that same issue. We've started to meter the number of customers that can come into a store at any point in time to help create more social distance. I think those are examples of how each business is going to need to prepare and respond.
You've talked about the Walmart workers as being heroic, and they are on the front lines at great risk to themselves, I might add. 2 workers from Walmart in the Chicago area passed away from the virus. One of the families has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the company. And the question is whether some of these policies you just outlined came a little too late. For example, taking temperatures of employees in the stores. That happened 6 days after one of the Chicago employees passed away.
Yeah, our heart goes out to those families and the associates in those stores. We think that everything we're doing, take our leave policy, for example, gives people the freedom to not come to work. We certainly don't want any associates coming to work if they are not feeling well and they have a temperature. And the things we've done with our cash bonus and pulling forward quarterly bonuses give them the freedom from a financial point of view to make that choice. And then when they get to the store, all of the steps that I described just a minute ago are intended to keep people as safe as possible as we work through this. But I agree with you, associates that are getting up every day and choosing to come to work and serve customers are really heroic. And I've been traveling around the country. I was in North Carolina this week. I've been in Ohio and Nebraska and other places recently. And our associates have an incredible attitude and a commitment to serving others. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to come on today is just to thank them, appreciate everybody that's working in retail and in manufacturing, by the way. Those that are keeping the supply chain going, choosing to get up every day and go to work and contribute is really truly heroic during this period of time, and we're grateful to them.
I think all Americans have a new appreciation for the hard work that is being done and how necessary it is and how much we all rely on it. Walmart is one of those businesses that's actually doing well in this terrible economy where the Dow is down, Walmart stock is up. And the executives will see a benefit from that, frankly. They'll reap the rewards of that. Is it time, beyond just temporary bonus or temporary paid leave extension, that kind of thing, is it time to do more for the Walmart employees so they can have a piece of that financial success?
Yeah, we've been taking a number of steps. As you may remember, we did a special cash bonus right at the beginning of this process to put money in their pockets, and we pulled forward a quarterly bonus. We've been making adjustments to our paid time off plan. We've got a 3-tier process there where associates can choose to not come to work, and a number of them have. It's one of the reasons why we've been hiring so many people during this period of time. Since March 19th in the United States, we've hired over 100,000 people to join Walmart and help out, and that's really important because a lot of our associates are feeling fatigued from working so hard for so many days and weeks. As we go forward, we'll keep looking for opportunities to support them more because, as I mentioned earlier, they really are stepping up.
Let's talk about what people are buying. Obviously, they've been stockpiling supplies like toilet paper, paper towels, hand sanitizer, and a lot of times you go to the store, it's not on the shelves. When do you feel like you'll be able to meet the demand that's out there consistently?
I think it's important that everyone know that our merchandise continues to flow. Our replenishment team, the suppliers are really working hard to make that happen. Food is recovering and in good shape. Hand sanitizer has been a little harder to come by. Our associates have it, and we're working to put it on the shelf, but as soon as we do, it's gone. Paper goods are continuing to sell out quickly. In the last 5 days, we've sold enough toilet paper for every American to have their own roll just in 5 days. So there's plenty of flow coming, but if everyone could just kind of manage and buy week to week rather than stocking up at this point, it'd be helpful for everybody.
There was an announcement a few weeks ago at the White House. You, Walmart, and other big box retailers were going to participate in housing mobile testing sites for the virus in your parking lots. As I understand it, there have been a few of those set up, but they're not for everybody. They're for frontline workers. It hasn't really gone or caught on nationwide yet. What's the status of that, and what do you expect?
Yeah, we're making progress. Walmart, along with some other retailers, have been working with the testing labs, state governments, and the federal government to try and stand these up. We've put up a few, and we think we're going to have about 20 sites open over 10 states in the next couple of weeks. PPE was the original limitation, but that's starting to improve, and we're hoping to get those open and operating quickly in the places where they're needed most. The government also asked for some assistance from us and from others for disposable surgical gowns, and we've been working to source that and provide it through our supply chain in partnership with McKesson. And through April, we think we found an additional 1 million gowns that we'll be able to get to hospitals. And through the month of May, millions more to help out on the front line.
Well, that is great news to hear. And before I let you go, as the CEO of Walmart, you certainly have a unique view on the pulse of America. Is there anything that people are buying a lot of right now that kind of surprised you?
You can definitely see that as people have stayed home, their focus has shifted. It started out with food and consumables, and then it moved to things like puzzles and games, things to entertain kids and educate children, as you would guess. Lately, we've seen more grooming products. People are starting to need a haircut, and so you start to see more beard trimmers and hair color and things like that. It's interesting to watch the dynamic play out.
Well, hair color right here. Walmart CEO Doug McMillon, thank you for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Savannah.